All right, with Roman history, we're just going to focus mostly on the setup of the Republic and then with the rise of the Emperor. So, early stage of Roman history goes back to the time of the Etruscans. And as you can see in this map here, what pre Roman autonomy looked like. That the Etruscans are basically over the people of northern Italy all the way down this west coast here. And there's Rome as one of the cities under Etruscan power. And you just really need to go back to the textbook to know about the Etruscans. It's not going to be on the test, but they're more of the culture that sets up the Romans. Some of the things that are important to know is there's similarities here with like Greek city-states. So if you're trying to think in some ways how familiar this place is, that's probably one of the close things to keep in mind. Eventually, the Romans will prevail, and the Etruscans just basically are out of the picture. And the political situation in Rome falls to this aristocratic republic. Now, talking about the republic, you're mostly focused on the aristocracy in control. Now, the republic is made up of citizens, only men, and that at the top of the republic are councils. And early on, the Senate mostly favors the patricians. So the patricians are the landholding aristocrats, and for the first couple hundred years or so, it's an Etruscan. I'm not Etruscan. It's a patrician favored society. When there is problems, they will have a state of emergency. A dictator is put into control, and you basically have an army thrown together. So this is the earlier years until you start having the private armies like you see around the time of Caesar. But as time goes on, you begin to get the need for more representation in the Senate, and that's where the plebeians, who are the commoners, begin to have a voice in the Senate. And for example, one aspect of that would be the election of tribunes, who are basically the voice of the plebeians. They have veto power available 24/7, and are seen as a mouthpiece for the plebeian cause in the Senate. And as you're going to see throughout the notes and you're reading, the tribunes and even those aristocrats who are more plebeian conscious. In fact, Julius Caesar is one of the reasons he'll be executed, is he's seen as being part of the aristocratic class, but appealing too much to the plebeian cause. This will be kind of a power struggle throughout aristocratic republic all the way to the rise of the emperors. Now, the thing that pushes this tension to the forefront is the Punic Wars. And the Punic Wars is going to be what expands Rome around the coast of the Mediterranean. Now, the center of the Punic Wars are the battles against Hannibal from Carthage. Basically, the Romans had intervened in Carthage politics. Carthage is here in northern Africa. So this is like, after all is done, you can see the territory that's going to be part of the Roman Empire, all this shaded colored area. So it includes the Greeks, Spain, and northern Africa, and where Carthage is at. Anyways, Hannibal eventually raises forces, including an army with elephants, and you can see the map there. They go and march on Rome. In fact, the march itself was, amazing. But by the time he gets around Rome, they never do actually take Rome. The biggest thing that Hannibal does is win at the Battle of Cannae in 216. You can see the notes there, the damage that does for Rome. It's a humiliating defeat, and it's just by the sheer force of Rome's allies that they're able to stay away from losing Rome itself. Anyways, it's going to be a guy named Scipio who was at the Battle of Cannae. He's going to go first take Spain, then invade Carthage itself. And there, Hannibal was called back. So Hannibal has been fighting in Italy for around a decade or so, and goes back and meets Scipio at the Battle of Zama, where he's going to lose. Basically, Scipio used the tactics that Hannibal used against the Romans at the Battle of Cannae. Scipio used that against Hannibal at Zama. So make sure to watch the documentary I've posted in the module for more on that fight. After that, it's basically a mop-up job. But the big thing, as the map shows, is how is Rome going to deal with this expansion? And what actually happens is you get a lot of corruption that develops in Rome based on this expansion. So a lot of corruption with provincial governors ruling across the empire, in buying up lands, and then overpopulation because of the increased urbanization in Rome. So it's kind of a crisis situation. Okay, so that leads us to the rise of Julius Caesar, who is one of the most fascinating characters in history. Now, as you can see in the notes, prior to Julius Caesar, there had been a couple of dictators already that marched on Rome, Gaius Marius and then Sulla. Now, Caesar himself, as I mentioned earlier, is someone who is sympathetic to the plebeian cause, and as someone who's very wealthy, will utilize his wealth to gain political power. And so in around 60 BC, Caesar will form the first triumvirate with Crassus and Pompey. And these other two also have private armies, and so they're very powerful figures in Rome. And there's quite the tension with the Senate and these three figures. Well, eventually, Caesar himself will go and fight the Gallic Wars, basically modern day France and a little bit of Germany. He'll go there and fight. In the meantime, Crassus dies in the Middle East, and Pompey will be ruling back at Rome. While Caesar is gone, the Senate will get Pompey against Caesar. After Caesar's victories in Gaul, Caesar is positioned is put in a very bad position. He gets word that he's being considered a traitor. He needs to come home, hand over his territory, disband his army. Eventually, Caesar decides to cross the Rubicon, and he is going to invade Rome. Now, Caesar is very popular in Rome, and the Senate and Pompey are not. So Pompey and his allies flee to Greece, and Caesar chases them there. They fight. Caesar will eventually win, and he will chase Pompey's force down to Egypt, where by the time Caesar gets there, Pompey's already been killed by the Egyptians. It's there that he has his affair with Cleopatra and helps keep her in power in Egypt. And And as you can see here at the bottom, Caesar does seem to be interested in trying to reform Rome, including things like securing land for army veterans. Obviously, that's the bulk of Caesar's forces, and his support is in the military, which he's funding, but also even giving certain religious political liberty to the Jewish people living in Judea. Unfortunately, he's not very popular with the Senate, and a cabal happens and they assassinate him. Following his assassination, this leads into another civil war. This time it is Octavian, Caesar's grandnephew, Mark Antony, Caesar's chief lieutenant, who has been at his side, throughout the Gallic Wars and on, and then Marcus Lepidus, who is head of Caesar's cavalry. So you got a second triumvirate that rises. They go to war with Brutus Cassius and the other senators. And the senators are eventually defeated at the Battle of Philippi in 42. Then the empire is basically split between Antony and Octavian. Antony gets east, and he hooks up with Cleopatra, literally, in the east, and Octavian gets the west. And immediately after, Octavian begins to move against Antony and will invade and defeat Antony and Cleopatra around 30 BC at the Battle of Actium. And following that, Antony commits suicide, and then Cleopatra within the next day as well. So basically, the first century BC is you have a number of dictators, a number of civil wars break out until finally around the end of the first century, Octavian is kind of left standing. And Octavian opens up what's known as the Pax Romana. And he's named Caesar Augustus. So he's the first emperor to kind of take the name as emperor as Caesar. And Augustus means exalted, the exalted one. So he's the first to start the Caesars, the reign of the emperors, which goes all the way till the fall of Rome. And he's basically the sole dictator of Rome. Our republic is there basically just to back up his power. And, if you know anything about Roman history, most of the emperors following him are neurotic, paranoid, have some major problems. And so it's not the best political situation. But under Augustus, it does seem that a lot of people were happy with him. He's a capable ruler, and basically brought back quote unquote family values to Rome. Example of that is trying to tone down divorce and things like that. So a lot of building projects. So it's kind of people are kind of open to the reign of Augustus and welcoming of it. And so that gets us away from all the chaos of the rest of the first century. And we'll pick up more on Rome and look at the way how Christianity intersects with this in the next lecture.